Are you a glass half full kind of person? If you are, I actually have some good news for you. About half of retirees are able to maintain their spending levels in retirement. What I mean by that is they can maintain their lifestyle, especially during that first 5 years of retirement, which is so important. So how do we make this a reality? Because if 50% can maintain their spending levels, that means the other 50 cannot. Here's my goal with this video: to help you understand how important the first 5 years of retirement actually are and how you can create some certainty for yourself. I'm going to take you inside my retirement planning software, the one I use for my clients, and I'm going to suggest a strategy to help you get to retirement in one piece. I'll profile Ralph and Rachel Retirement, who want to retire in 10 years. Now, before I get into the analysis, there's a couple of things I want everyone to keep in mind. First thing is that when we retire, we should not take any risk with money we need to pay our bills. The second thing is that we're not going to need all of our money on day one. So if that's the case, why should we treat all our money the same? Rather than some generic stock or bond allocation like 50-50 or 70-30, let's think of retirement in terms of segments. First 5 years, second 5 years, etc. I want to create certainty for my clients, and it starts with that critical first 5 years of retirement. I also want them to spend more when they're younger and healthier. I say that all the time because before long, it's doctor's appointments, MRIs, and visits to the Walgreens pharmacy. We should get while the getting's good. So why are the first 5 years of retirement so important? There's a concept known as sequence of returns risk, which specifies that it's the order of returns that's most important in retirement, not necessarily the returns themselves.
So let's take a look at some numbers. What I've done is listed out the S&P 500 returns for the 3-year period beginning in 2007 and going to 2009. If we start with 100 grand and we assume in year one, we're going to have a positive return of 5.49, then a negative return. You might remember that in 2008, it was the largest drop in the S&P since the Great Depression, great year. Negative 38%, 26% up the third year. If you started at $100,000, you would end up with $82,000. Now let's switch up the second and third year here. We start with the 5.49, and then you have 26%. I just switched the third and the second year, and then a negative 38%. Look, you still have $82,409. And that's what happens when you're working and investing when you don't need the money. The order of the returns does not matter. Once you retire, it becomes a different story. Here's what I mean. If you remember the year 2022, you might remember that we had a big bear market. It was not a pleasant year. Sure, the gains in our 401ks has been wonderful lately, but 2022 is not good. If you were forced to retire at the beginning of 2022 and you were not prepared, you might have some trouble with your plan work. So in scenario A, we would start with 500,000, same as scenario B. In A, we're going to talk about an increase. In B, we're going to talk about a decrease. So you can see 6% and then negative 10%. At the end of the year, we would presume to have 530,000 in scenario A versus 450,000 in scenario B. Let's say we took 4% of the initial value out, which is $20,000. You can see the difference in how much money we would have after 1 year, 510,000 versus 430,000. These are not silly numbers. This happened 2 years ago. This is what we would call sequence of returns risk, bad luck risk, didn't plan properly risk. This is exactly what we don't want to see happen.
Hey everyone, it's Erin Kennedy with a quick message. We've created a free training video to teach you how to increase your spending ability, reduce downside risk, and make sure your money lasts as long as you do. You can click the link in the description right where it says free training. And of course, if you like what we're doing, please like and subscribe.
So let's take a look at this case. I have Ralph and Rachel Retirement, and they were born in 66 and 67. They're 57 and 56. They want to retire in 10 years. Longevity is 90. They have $1 million. Actually, they have 1.4 million in individual style accounts. They have $800,000 in their IRAs. They aim to want to spend $10,000 a month beginning in 10 years. So the system's going to inflate this number. I've also given them permission for at least, 5 or 6 years to spend an extra $2,000 a month because I want them to spend more when they're younger and healthier before they spend all their time with doctors and MRIs and at Walgreens pharmacy. Very important to take into account healthcare. If you look at these costs, they are extreme. I want them to lay into the plan year after year. This is data that comes in from Medicare billings. Let's look at Social Security. I have them taking it 70. Their primary insurance amount for Ralph is $37.32. Rachel was raising their children, so she's going to be getting half of his benefit. And then I have segments. So what segments are, and I'll what I'll do here is I'll show you this by virtue of a table, segments. I mentioned that we don't need all of our money at day one when we retire. So why do we treat it all the same? I also said that I don't want us to take any risk with money we need to pay bills. So what I've done is I've taken the retirement and I've broken it basically into 5-year blocks, 5 times 5-year blocks. So you can see we need a lot of money here because we haven't taken Social Security quite yet. When we are taking Social Security, we really don't have a lot of demands, not nearly as much on these 2 buckets, this whole 10-year period, which means that money can grow more effectively. And so I want you to think of pushing money out, like you can see here going from this side to this side, pushing money out. This is the surplus column. So what the analysis is suggesting is that we're not going to need any of this money. So I put in all the money they have, all the money they want to spend. I put in all the medical. I've put in inflation. I've thrown everything together. And the system says we're not going to need this money. Right? This money will go to their children. So we'll invest that money differently, more aggressively, so we can have greater growth. So this is what I mean when I say we should do everything based on segments. But I want to point out the problem. Most systems, whether you go online and use sophisticated retirement planning software like I'm using, most systems are all the same in that they make you give a rate of return while money is accumulating. You can see here that we put $2.2 million into the system, but the plan starts as 3.583. That's the growth. So I have to put a number in. Now, I'm going to try to be conservative. I know that over time money grows. So I'll put 5% in. This is a guess because I can't say for certain that they're going to earn 5% on their money. They could be overly conservative. They could be emotional investors. They can make mistakes. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. So this is the problem to me, is we're making an assumption here that we're going to have 5% growth and that the plan assumes that you're going to have $3.5 million, 3.583 to be exact, day one of the plan, which is day one of retirement. So we need to do better with that.
So here's what bothers me. If you look at the spreadsheet that I created, we're starting with $2.2 million, and I have this money growing at 5%. I mentioned just a few seconds ago that I have to put some number in there. I like to be conservative. I certainly don't want to use 2%, but I wouldn't use 8% on my worst enemy's retirement plan. So I use 5%. So you can see here that I just have this $2.2 million growing by about 5% each year, and we're ending with $3.583 million. In reality, money does not grow that way. It doesn't grow in some kind of linear fashion. I get the concept of compounding. We learned about that when we were younger, but that was a simplistic example. That was when we didn't lose any of our principal. In a case like this, if we're 5% down after 1 year, as I showed you in the illustration earlier in the video, then we're in a far different place. So in this case, to give Ralph and Rachel some security and to help them get to the beginning of the plan in the manner I've described, which is that 5%, I might consider using what's known as a MYGA, a multi-year guaranteed annuity. The MYGA in this case is for 10 years, and it has a rate of 5.2%, which will compound over the 10-year period because it doesn't lose value. So if I come back over here, if I were to put $400,000 of their money in a MYGA at 5.2%, I would be guaranteed that they would have $664,000 at the end of that 10-year period. So let's go back to our analysis. I know that in segment 1, I need $713,000. So what that means is that if you take into account taxes, whenever I'm going to take Social Security, healthcare, inflation, all my assets, the whole shebang, I know that for the first 5-year period, which would be the first 5 years of retirement, remember this video is about the first 5 years of retirement, that I'm going to need $713,000. This MYGA, if I were to put $400,000 in, it would give me $664,000. That's 90% of what I'm going to need for the first 5 years of retirement. What that allows me to do is to take the other segments, all these other segments where I need less money. This 5-year segment, 465. This 5-year segment, 463, right? So Social Security is in effect in segment 2 and 3. This is a 10-year period where I need a lot less money. By virtue of the fact that I have locked up the first 5 years of retirement, I now do not need any of my other assets until year 16. Presumably, I can be far more comfortable in the notion of a 5% rate of return over that period of time because most of that's going to be invested in equity. What I'm trying to do is to handle segment 1 because I know that that's where the real danger is. I just want to take that risk off the table. I can do that with the concept of this multi-year guaranteed annuity. So let's understand what's involved here. This is a 10-year lockup, a 10-year surrender. There are ramifications if we kill the contract before 10 years. We can take out 10% of the accumulated value after the first policy anniversary. That's pretty good. That's some liquidity. As I mentioned, there is a 10-year surrender, which means that for example, if you tried to kill this after 3 years, you would lose 8% of your money, and you have that free withdrawal provision that should help you. So this happens to be Ocean View Harborview 10, known as a MYGA high band because we're putting in more than $80,000. This is just one example how I can take some risk off the table. What I'm trying to do is handle the first 5 years of the plan because I know that stocks will generate enough return over time that I can take more risk in segments 2 through 4 and the surplus to either allow Ralph and Rachel to spend more money when they're younger and healthier or to leave more to their children if they like them.
So that's what I would do with Ralph and Rachel to solidify the first 5 years of the retirement. I believe we get through the first 5 years of retirement, we are in much better shape going forward. So that's how I would handle that. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. If you need help, my contact information is below. If you like what I'm doing, please subscribe to my videos. And thank you for watching.